Hey, everybody, welcome to the Boy Mom Podcast. I'm your host, Suzanne Carawan. I have a really special guest here today, Ryan McCann, and we're going to get into talking about Ryan and all the things that he's up to. So, hey, Ryan, welcome to the program.
Thank you for having me.
All right. So, first and foremost, why don't you give us, kind of set the table for us? Tell us, about your family. Where do you sit in there? Do you have siblings? Like, what does that look like to you?
So yeah, my mom and dad are originally from Columbus, Ohio. I got a sister who currently works at Riverside as a nurse. I'm in my fifth year at Seton Hill. Got my undergrad last year in exercise science, and I'm working towards my MBA in healthcare administration right now.
That's that. So, is your sister older or younger?
My sister's older. She is 25.
Okay, so you're the baby of the household,
I am.
right? Okay, so I think it's always interesting when we talk about having the divided house and the genders, right? Between you get the sister and the brother, because you get to be the only boy and you're the baby, right? So do you feel like let's start right there. So let's talk about your mom, right? And what kind of mom she was in that regard. Did she baby you? Do you feel like you were the special one because you're the last one?
I don't think so. I think she did a pretty good job. My sister would probably say otherwise.
The
Uh,
sisters always say that about the boys.
yeah, I know. There's always been a few things where I think my sister kind of laid the groundwork for, and so some things maybe came a little bit easier for me. Like I don't know, getting a car or getting my license, getting a phone. I think I got it a little bit earlier than her, so she definitely
Mm-hmm.
helped lay the groundwork for that. So I think she gets a little upset at times, like he got it, he got this and this earlier than I did, and my mom's like, well, I don't so I
Yeah.
don't think it's any special treatment. I think it's just kind of she was like the
Okay.
trial and error.
Yeah, we might have to pull your sister in and see what she thinks about
Yeah,
that. You got
yeah, I'm sure she'd have a different opinion.
I would say 9 times out of 10, we find that, in that boy-mom relationship, the boys get a little bit more extra. I don't know, you need sometimes a little extra help, I think is what
Yeah,
most moms
could
would
be,
say.
could be.
So how do you remember yourself what kind of kid were you? What kind of kid were you growing up?
I was definitely a little bit of a wild kid. I definitely was, all over the place at times. I was just constantly doing things. I was always doing sports, always doing all these different activities and clubs growing up, and definitely was a handful at times for sure. My parents can probably speak to that better than I can, but I definitely was a little bit of a wild kid growing up.
So where did your mom fall in that? Was she more the disciplinarian? Was she more there's always like one parent that's like good cop, bad cop, right? On that type of stuff.
I would say it was kind of, I think it was 50-50.
Yeah.
Growing up in two different households with my dad and my mom. My I think they both took turns, kind of like my dad would sometimes be bad cop, my mom would sometimes be bad cop, and kind of vice versa. So I think they were communicating behind the scenes on that, on who was going to be bad cop, good cop. So, but
That's
yeah,
good then. That's actually the definition of how you're supposed to co-parent, right? You
yeah,
need equal FTA, right? Equal foot to ass.
yeah,
So
yeah,
we like to say in my household, right? So you have to equal parts there, so it's not all one thing. So that's great. So you played a lot of sports. Obviously, you're still playing sports still to this day, right?
yeah.
So how did that come about? How did you get involved in that? How did you stay with that? Like, what role did your mom play in that piece of it?
So my mom, she definitely, I mean, it was more so my dad. He was just kind of, I mean, growing up, he was just kind of, it was like growing up, it was just like a new, every season there was a new sport he wanted me to try. It was football, then, basketball came around, then I played baseball for a little bit. And then one spring, my dad just kind of came home with a lacrosse stick. He got it like Sports Authority and was like, all right, let's give this a try. And that was that.
Okay.
My mom was always there, so very supportive throughout the whole thing, taking me everywhere. It was more so kind of my dad just like, let's just see what he likes and just like kind of put him in everything, kind of
Yeah.
see where that
Keep you
goes.
active.
Yep.
Mhm. Yep.
Absolutely. So
And so,
yeah.
but your mom was always supportive because that's
Yeah.
that's uh that's
Absolutely.
an important point because for all the moms out there, we have a lot of moms who are not supportive. So I'm just going to put a big point of how great that is that your mom was supportive, and to this day you're still playing, right?
Mhm,
Because a lot of moms are one super scared that their kid's going to get hurt, right?
mhm.
So let's just talk
Yeah.
football for a second, okay? So what kind of give me the injuries? What have you had in the lifetime? You had any injuries?
I actually have been pretty fortunate. I haven't had too many crazy injuries, but when I first got to DeSales, I had a hip injury, and it kind of sidelined me for the whole summer, and so I didn't really get to play a whole lot my junior year. Just transferring in, so it was kind of a tough time. So like my mom
Yeah.
and dad, my mom especially was there for me a lot during that process, and definitely helped kind of keep me kind of focused throughout that and just patient. But both my parents did a great job at that, helping me overcome that. But I've been very fortunate. I haven't had a whole lot of injuries throughout my athletic career, so never really been sidelined too much from things.
Yeah, so let's make sure. Let's just kind of read, especially it's like Ryan. Didn't you play football all the way through high school,
Yeah,
right? And so what? You didn't immediately have concussions and everything else because we have so many moms that are anti-football. And if
yeah,
there's one sport from a mom perspective that helps, that I think is the best for boys, I'd have to go with football. If I had
yeah,
to rank them, right? Now my boys haven't played every sport out there, but I'll tell you during those football seasons the amount of discipline they have versus the other sports, night and day, right?
oh yeah,
So,
yeah, for sure.
yeah, yeah. So on that note, I mean, let's talk about that. I mean, so here you're running around, you're doing all the crazy stuff, right? And so, like, what did those years, do you remember them? Do you remember, like, do you remember going between practices and coming home for dinner and all those things? And I mean, you a lot of movement back and forth, right? How did your mom kind of fit into that? What do you remember about her? I guess is what all moms want to know. Their sons are going to remember them as like these glorious creatures, right? So, like, what do you remember about those kind of years growing up?
Yeah, so I just remember. I mean, I was constantly moving. I'd be at basketball practice till late at night, right after school, and then kind of like, and my parents did a pretty good job. Like I think my dad would like typically take me, and then my mom would pick me up after she got off work. And we would always in my household, we still to this day we have dinner very late in my household. We have it like typically like 8 or 9 o'clock, just with how
Uh,
my mom and my
yeah,
stepdad get off of work. So it's just kind of become natural. And it's funny because like all my friends are like they like we ask them to hang out, and they'll be like, Ryan, you ready to hang out?" I'm like, "Oh, I still haven't had dinner yet. It's like 9 o'clock." And but yeah,
yeah,
growing up, just both my parents, just kind of making it work around my schedule, which I'm very fortunate for. They made a lot of sacrifices in terms of like kind of working around their busy schedule. So it was definitely a constantly moving. I was definitely something that made add a little bit of a challenge to their everyday life. Especially in once I got to springtime when I was playing soccer, baseball, and lacrosse, I'd be going from a baseball game in the morning to a soccer tournament in Cincinnati, and then the next day I have a lacrosse game in Dublin, Ohio, just like all over the place. So
right,
they did a
yeah.
great job helping me out throughout
So
that.
so I mean, in the moment, if you dial yourself back to let's go those, like I like to call them the smelly years, the 11, 12, 13, those in between weirdo kind of, I think they're weird years. I think boys can get really weird in middle school, right? I think the parents have got to make sure that they don't go off down a strange path,
Yeah,
is my theory. But in those years, I mean, did you actually appreciate your mother though during that time? Probably not. I mean, that
I
would
think it's
be,
definitely been more so like I can kind of like once I got to college, I was able to sit back and be like, man, like that definitely was a hard thing for them to do at the time. But at the time,
yeah,
I was definitely just like, oh, it's just they're just taking me to practice. Like it's just nothing really to think about.
right.
But, kind of sitting back once I got older, it was like, oh wow, they really were doing a lot for me back
Yeah,
then.
so I'm leading the witness on that one because again, I think we have a lot of young moms. Like we have a lot of moms that listen to this who are in those. They're starting to get into those years, etc. And it can be a really tough time for a mom, right? Because you've got this son. They're just different. They're just biochemically different from you anyway. And I think as the mom, you start to really realize that, like, oh, hopefully you do, that these are not girls. These are not wired the same way. Right. And then boys tend to get really quiet. Right.
Mhm.
And then they're running around and then you don't get a lot of feedback from them. They're not like the little cuddly little
Mhm.
boys anymore. Right. You get into those years as you start to kind of become a man and you have to say, hold on, because you're going to get to a point where you've got a grad school kid like you and you're actually appreciative, right? So they had to stay with hope. It's
Yeah,
the bottom
definitely.
line. They got to keep with hope because it's going to turn around. So I mean, so let's talk about because those are those are tough years, those middle school and high school years, right? So, I mean, how did you were you that kind of kid? Were you the kid that, like, came and talked to your mom all the time? You're like, "Blah, blah, 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 blah," or you're like, "No, you didn't talk to her?" Yeah, like one-word answers and, like, she sat down, you ate, you slept, and then you were out the door.
I think definitely during that time, I was probably more so, kind of just came in, sat down, one word answers, didn't really want to talk too much and just kind
Engage.
of, yeah, and just
Yeah,
kind of went back and did my own thing or went and played video games or told her I was doing homework, but I was really just on my phone or something. I don't know. But
right.
yeah, definitely that was what I was probably like during those times.
Looking back at that, like, if you could say to your younger self, if you look back, I mean, would you give yourself other advice, or would you be like, "This just part of the process," and then talk to me about how your relationship is now with your mom?
I think it was definitely at the time. I think it was just part of the process. To be honest, I mean, of course, I'd love to go back and say, be a little bit more talkative, be a little bit more open to, having conversations with her, or just not being so kind of closed off towards the end of the day. But yeah, I definitely think, being now it's completely different where like I'll actually sit down and have, like real conversations and talk about things going on in my life more with her. But yeah, definitely at the time I was just pretty closed off, I would say.
Yeah, I mean, and that's I just that's not atypical, right? I mean, that's not atypical, but it's super hard and painful for the mom.
Yeah,
It's
I
because
can.
it's not our love language often, right? But so, like, yeah, I mean, what I think the big epiphany I had, and in my household, I've got the husband and I've got two sons, and even my dog is a male dog, right? So I'm like surrounded. And then one day it occurred to me, like, I was like, "What are you guys thinking about?" They were all sitting on the couch, right in order, and then they literally said nothing. And of course, in my brain, that's an impossibility. Like, what do you mean there's nothing? Like, I think they're lying to me. I'm getting mad. And then I realized one day, literally nothing is happening. Like, it
No,
is
yeah, yeah. I was gonna say it's like they're actually being honest.
they're being dead honest. Like,
Yeah.
literally, men have this capability of just having like a space of nothingness,
Oh
right?
yeah.
And I think that is so hard to understand for being a girl or a woman, right? And then the other piece that I want your comment on this, because I'd love to know your take on this. So when I was in high school, I was like pom cheerleader, right, and all this stuff. And here's the football games, and we were so self-conscious, and we're thinking everybody's looking at us, right? If we make a mistake, it's the end of the world. So if I go forward and I think about high school football and then having sons that play, nobody watched the cheer.
Yeah. Yeah.
Nobody paid any attention to them, right? And so it's this weird kind of dynamic of like, I remember thinking, in high school as a girl, like, oh my gosh, you're thinking all the time about the boys and da da da. And it's like, how much are you really thinking about the girls? How much were you really thinking about them? Like that really took up your mental space and all the time?
Uh, I
Some,
mean,
yeah, yeah,
um, I don't know. I mean, I would say like, I was in high school. I just remember being very, focused on like just, sports and, school, of course, and, especially towards the end, just like kind of focusing on where I was going to go to school for, because I was busy with, like recruiting and everything. And
yeah.
I would say, I mean, I never put a whole lot of time into, I was like, oh my gosh, there's a cheerleader over there. Like,
Exactly. You're not that's exactly my point, right? And
yeah.
so it's understanding again that the dynamic between kind of men and women and just thought patterns and where the time and effort is going all the time, right? It's like we females are so relationship oriented, right? And that becomes kind of the center where, you guys tend to have you're thinking about these other things that are far more on the horizon, right? Of like things that are happening.
Mhm.
So, with that, I mean, I'd say overall, right, thinking about, where you are now, et cetera, you know, what do you think are the greatest lessons so far that your mom like has taught you? Because you said you've gone through this kind of evolution in your relationship with her. And by the way, I should ask, when you were little, like when you were like early elementary, like kindergarten and first grade and second grade, what kind of boy were you? Were you like a big like hugger to your mom and ran up to her and that type of stuff? Like did projects with her? Like what kind of stuff did you do?
I was definitely during those years. I was definitely extremely, reserved, and I think my mom would say the same thing about me. I was very, kind of shy, and especially in like school environment, I was very shy, very quiet. but like when I got home, like I was just like all over the place. But I was always a kid that, like, for example, like I would get hurt, like, running around outside, or I'd fall in the house from running around, and like my parents or my mom would try and come and comfort me, and I would just be like, no, get away, because I just kind of
Uh,
wanted to deal with it myself. I just always been that way. I still am to this day. I will get hurt on the field, and like go see a trainer. I was just like, no, get away. And but yeah, I think definitely I was very. It was like kind of like a turn a switch on. At school, very quiet, very respectful, very you know kept to myself, and then at home I would just kind of let loose. And my mom would always be like, when she'd have parent teacher conferences, be like, "Who is this kid? Like,
yeah.
I don't know this shy, quiet kid." And yeah,
But that's actually like if you read more stuff about, like there's one book that I always recommend called Real Boys. And if you read about like a healthy boy, that's the definition of a healthy boy. And a lot of times the parents aren't realizing that because they come home and they think, this kid, like, what's wrong with my kid? Right. Like they're right. But I mean, that means you controlled yourself all day. You've been right. And like you're in a safe space at home. So you're gonna go crazy, right? As you learn to kind of self-regulate. And then
yeah,
that's why it's hard because then a lot of times you go into those middle school kind of years and then they go quiet. And now the parents are like, uh-oh, I miss the noise, right? I miss all of that kind of stuff. So it's again, it ebbs and flows and whatnot. So I mean, so then okay, so where you are now and your exalted age of what are you now? 23?
too. Me too.
22?
Mhm.
22. So yeah, 22 and looking back and kind of where you are now, I mean, what would you kind of say? What are the big when you think about your mom, what are the big life lessons that you feel like she's really taught you? Like you can like without a shadow of doubt, you're like, that came from my mom.
I would definitely say, patience, learning just patience. Like, I'm not gonna, you know, not everything's just gonna happen just like at the snap of your fingers. Just it takes time. And part of the process with like of that taking time, and that journey is just like you learn more things along the way, and then it'll eventually come to you. And that's like the biggest thing my mom has taught me is just being patient, letting things happen naturally, and just continue to keep working at things, and just don't let any like obstacles along the way kind of discourage you.
Oh, that's pretty powerful. Well, how do you do that? I mean, what's your self-talk on that one? Right? Because I mean, that's like a lot of people would love to have that's a skill you've developed, right? So I mean, how do you what do you say to yourself when in doing that?
I think it's more so kind of something I realized throughout just like my life throughout school, and especially sports. And my mom kind of helped me realize that, like, like that, like, she kind of helped me put it in perspective, because I was always getting so frustrated. Like, why does this always happen? Like, why is it always like it takes like a second try for me, or three tries? It's like, why is it always like this? And she just kind of helped me put it in perspective, like in that way, where it's just like it just wasn't meant to happen at that time, or it's part of the process of just the journey of getting to where you want to be.
So the whole God's got a plan,
Pretty
right?
much, pretty much.
It's
She just put it
his
in
time, not your
perspective.
time.
'Cause I just was always realizing, and I'd always go and ask her, I was like, why is it happening like this?" And she just kinda gave me that different perspective of like, "Oh, like, this is actually how it's exactly supposed to be."
Right. So I mean, so that one, I mean, we have a lot of guys that actually listen to this too. So I mean, and and the moms then tell their sons about this. So let's talk about that because um I've had the joy and privilege of watching watching a chunk of a small portion of your sports career, and I know some of the backstory. But what are the times that you things haven't come because you're a naturally gifted athlete? So I mean, what are the times that it hasn't just been just smooth sailing? Nobody would know that. They would think you're the guy that smooth. You're playing, in college. I mean, that's like half the people's dreams, right? So I mean, what didn't come easy for you?
Especially when in regards to lacrosse, I started playing when I was in 6th grade. Played for like one season of rec league, then carried on to like 7th grade. Didn't really like it a whole lot. Well, I wouldn't say it was I didn't like it. It's just kind of I wanted to focus on football and basketball growing up, and I was very heavily involved with those sports. I was doing extra work, every day. Footwork, getting extra shots up for basketball, going to all the extra stuff at my high school. And, I kind of came around back to lacrosse my junior year of high school, just from like a buddy, just kind of say, hey, why not give it a try? And came out, but like, that was something that was like kind of really difficult for me because I hadn't picked up a stick in 4 years. And that process was definitely definitely difficult at first, but I think all the other stuff I was doing for my other sports kind of helped translate over to lacrosse. And when I was at the sales, Coach Tripp, he definitely helped me kind of get back on the right path. Just kind of teaching me things slowly. I'm sure I was definitely a little bit of a late bloomer in terms of that stuff, but he helped me get right on the right track with that. But just kind of just understanding like, I haven't played the sport in forever. It was kind of difficult, seeing all these kids who can throw with their left and throw with their right and do all these, have great stick skills and understand the game so much better than me. And, it was hard at first, but I kind of, sat back and like, look, this is like my second week out here. So just sticking with
Okay.
that. And, I was fortunate enough, Tripp gave me the opportunity to, play, my senior year and get some good playing time. And eventually that led to me getting recruited by Seton Hill. And, when I got to Seton Hill, it was kind of, like same thing over again when I first started playing at the sales, I bottom of the depth chart. I remember freshman year, I walked into my coach's office for end of year meetings or end of fall meetings, and he was like, "Yeah, Ryan, you're at the bottom of the depth chart, like literally like at the bottom of the depth chart." But I was a kid that they kind of just took a chance on, and I took that opportunity and ran with it. Every year I just kept getting better and better. Freshman year I would say I had the biggest jump. I was doing everything that summer to get going and get caught up to speed a little bit and earn more playing time my sophomore year, then made another big jump my sophomore going into junior year. And still I thought I was at the level where I should have been at, but they kind of wanted me to get a little bit more confident with myself. And just went back to the drawing board that summer, just went even harder than I did the previous years from coming into my senior year. And senior year came in, all the confidence in the world, like knowing like this is like my year to like kind of put where I have the best opportunity to play, and got into the main lineup of my position group. I play defensive midfield, and you know it was just the most, and earning more playing, like being one of the main guys in my unit, and it was a very rewarding feeling, going through this past
Hmm.
4 years and just grinding, knowing I won't get a shot until my senior year to like actually be one of the guys. And we went 18-2, went to the Elite Eight, and won a conference championship. And I had a younger teammate ask me, like, was it worth it? Kind of
Mm.
knowing you weren't going to play till your senior year. And I told him, I was like, if I had to do it all over again, I would. It was the most
Mm.
rewarding thing ever. Going through all those hard summers, and all the kind of self doubt at times, because it always creeps in.
Of
And
course. Yeah.
just kind of putting that on the back burner and just ignoring it and just continue to keep working. And having the senior year I did, I mean, it was worth it 100 times over. I told him, I was like, if that's what it has to be for you, I hope to God it is, because it was the most rewarding feeling, having my senior season last year.
So, so what are your tips there? Like, how did you get that resilience? What do you say to yourself? Because I think I'm so fascinated about your self talk, because that's so difficult. Number one, I mean, just let's emphasize one, you were committed to play a different sport and then committed to
But
play lacrosse, right? So you actually got recruited through two sports and then kind of last minute changed over. And then and for a lot of people they think it's, and to your point, I just want to emphasize again, you hadn't played the lacrosse in a long time. You're an athlete, you translated sports, you went and you played, right? You can keep playing. So a lot of people I see quit. I hate seeing kids quit their sports. I hate it. If you love the game, keep playing. Don't get into like this, that kind of thing. So but even to get to that level and then to play in college, so many kids just get a spot in college and they quit. You see it all the time, right? You see it all the time. They quit their first year. They're done. They stop playing. And so you've now played through this thing, and you're saying it was hard as hell, and
oh
you're
yeah,
saying it was worth it, right? So
yep.
what in the world did you say to yourself every day? Because a lacrosse schedule, what does that look like, Ryan? Do you like just like, is it once a week for an hour? Like, what does your lacrosse schedule look like?
So my lacrosse schedule, how it's been the past 4 years is, so in the fall we have 5 practices a week. We lift 4 times, and then we throughout that week we have like typically 3 meetings, just like watching film or going over some notes. So that's the fall. So that's
That's
we
the
have like
off
2 off
season,
days.
right?
Yeah,
For
that's
everybody
the
who's
off
listening,
season.
that's the off season.
That's the off
5
season.
days a week, right? All this extra stuff. And then what does the real season look like?
So real season is typically at first it starts off with like 1 game a week, like on Saturdays, but we'll have um 5 practices like leading up to the game. So we'll go Monday through Friday. Also we'll kind of ramp down the lifting a little bit. So we'll go 2 lifts throughout the week, and then we'll have more meetings. So we'll have probably like a meeting after every practice throughout the week, and then we'll have the game. Then we'll have Sunday off. Get some recovery in, and then repeat. And then once we get towards like the middle of the season, we'll have 2 games a week. So then it's really ramped up there. Just having that extra game on the week. So you're by the end of the season, your body's has a pretty big toll taken. But
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. So basically you had a really crappy job for a couple of years.
pretty much. Yeah, and then on top
And
of
then
that,
study
you
on
got
top
your
of it, right?
school and all the
Right.
other
And then
stuff.
study on top of it, all this stuff.
Yep.
And so again, so how did you keep going? Like why didn't you quit?
I think just the biggest thing for me was like, kind of seeing. Well, one, it was just like knowing like the kid growing up, and like me growing up as a kid, I always wanted to play college sports. I always wanted to play a sport in college, whether that was football or then I eventually found out it was lacrosse later on. But I kind of look back to like, what would that kid say that was like, you know,
Mm.
8 years old, being like, wow, you're playing college sports right now. Like, I wouldn't want to like,
Oh,
be
that's
like, oh
cool.
yeah,
Yeah.
because it was too hard, but it really wasn't that hard. I mean, it is hard, but it's not like, oh my God, you're gonna die. Like it's hard. Like, but it
Yeah.
was kind of just like, not letting that, like that kid down that was 8 years old, just loved playing sports, like not letting that, you know, letting him down in a way. But also at the same time, what kind of helped too was like seeing kids, quit the sport after, a few weeks in the fall, like they get to school, like, oh, I don't like it. Like I hated seeing that, and I wish I could have like talked those guys out of it, or just like other friends that did it, because I feel like it's so worth it playing a college sport. Like there's like not everybody gets to do that, and that's kind
Yeah.
of like you're like D1, D3, D2, D3. Like it doesn't matter. Like you're doing something that is
Does not
extremely
matter.
hard, and like not everybody gets to do that, and I feel like that's a very
Yeah.
good experience to have in life. And another thing too is like kind of like I would think of this like kind of picture. It's like there's like 2 miners, like one's digging and one quits right before he strikes gold, and the other one keeps going a little bit harder, and he eventually does it. And that's kind of like what I kind of compared my college journey. After I graduated last year, I kind of compared it to that. It was totally worth it in the end if you just go a little bit
Yeah.
harder, just keep trying.
Well, I mean, that's really, wise beyond your years on that one because that's the type of stuff. And, as a mother, I'm such a proponent of sports. One, just because I love sports, but two, I think from that piece of it, the mastery that you achieve and the mastery by sticking with something all those years, right? By the time you're finally going into college and you've started with some skill set, let's say in a sport, and it could be something else. But we're just taking sports, right? It could be the violin too. It's the same principle. But by playing all those years, when you're leaving high school and you're saying like you have literally been an athlete for 10 to 12 to 15 years and
Yeah.
you've done it consistently, season after season, that translates into college. And then you start having this trajectory where you separate from kind of the regular people and you just keep going. And that
Mm,
gap just keeps getting wider and wider the older you get. So, I mean, as you go into the grad school and you bridge into the workforce, it's
mm,
bigger and bigger and bigger because you have so much more resolve in your head. There's so much more muscle memory. And like, whether you're in a meeting or trying to win a deal or whatever you're doing business wise or career wise, you've
mm,
have that in the back of your mind that you've been through that, right? How many hell weeks have you been through? How
yeah,
hard could it be, right? Like how
mm,
hard can it really be then to go to the office and do whatever? I mean, it's like there's just that natural resolution in you to say I've got this. That tenacity I think is a key piece, which is why I'm such a proponent as a mother to say, plus I think boys need it because of the structure and you get out all your energy and everything else. So having said that, now you're at this place. Yeah, I feel like you're very at peace also with who you are. Like you really got a like good handle on who you are as a man. Kind of going forward, from that standpoint, kind of going back to your mom, what influence do you think she's had on you in now that you kind of are looking out and well, let me ask you that question. I mean, I know you're still playing, you're in grad school, you're still kind of in student athlete mode, but I mean, you know, you're you're now kind of going into like your next part of your adulthood, right? You're getting
Mm,
into like the real adulthood. So
mm.
are you thinking about stuff like, wow, like, I think women always want to know this, why I'm asking. Like, are you even have your like one day if I decide to get married, one day if I decide to have kids, like, do you have any of that thought pattern in your head at all?
Uh, Not really. I mean, I eventually would like to, get married, start a family one day, but that's not something like, I'm thinking about,
No, 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 not immediate, but like one day, right?
Oh
And
yeah,
so
one.
then when you do that, have you started kind of conceiving of yourself like what kind of what kind of man you would be, I think is what everybody wants to know, right? Like, I think all moms want to know at what point does the son start to say and turn and say, hey, I'm going to start establishing myself as a man, and here are like my values, right? And my, like, this is my ethos, this is what I think and believe. Do you feel like you're at that point where you could say, like, if someone said, hey, Ryan, as a man, what do you stand for?
Mhm. I think I definitely, as a man, West stand for, very family oriented, in the future. I think that's, a crucial part of life. And I think it's something that is special is that, having a family. And then also, I want to be, known as a man as, someone that's extremely hardworking and, someone that is, willing to put in, the extra work, the extra hours and, especially not just or so much in like, my work life once when I get there, but also, putting in the extra time, with my family, because, growing up, in a divorced household, it was kind of tough at times, I think for my sister, and I, they both my parents were very busy, we weren't, sometimes it'd just be me and her, you know, just us throughout the day. And, my dad would be at work or my mom would be at work, late. And, I just want to make sure like like I'm also putting in the extra work. I'm not saying my parents didn't, but just, doing what they did, making sure that
Mhm.
my kids eventually, know that I'm putting in the extra work, and they may not realize it at a young age, but that I'm always, trying to do, my part, and making sure family is, very heavily oriented.
I mean, that's awesome. That's great, because that's marriage material right there, right? That's great. So I mean, in all the stuff we've talked about, kind of taking a different piece of it, since I do know your mom, somewhat fairly well, but I mean, the I know how religious and spiritual she is, right? So where has your faith kind of fit into all this stuff we're talking about?
It's definitely had a very big factor of it, especially with me, like, just kind of sticking out, all these ups and downs I've gone throughout, like academics and also, and, especially sports. I've definitely relied on my faith, very heavily, and I pray about a lot of things, and just like asking for guidance so much. I'm just like, just for example, when I graduated this past year, I was pretty much out of didn't really know what to do. Like, do I come back for a fifth year and do I just go and start my life already? Or, I was just very torn. I didn't really know what to do. And, I relied heavily on prayer throughout that time. And, I think God kind of guided me to right where I would need to be. And I'm very appreciative. And it's always something, I don't really realize in the moment. And then once I get there, I'm like, God was guiding me to the right spot in that time.
So would you say that you have a kind of a regular prayer practice? Like, do you pray on a regular basis? Like, what's that look like?
I pray pretty much every night before I go to bed, just that's kind of the routine I've built up, once I got to college. And in high school I wasn't really, good about, I go to church on Sundays and, going to DeSales, going to the mass and, praying, every day before class. But I definitely once I got to college, I kind of, with me being so busy, I don't really have as much time on
Mhm.
to like go to church as regularly as I should. So I kind of built up a thing where it's like I just pray every night before I go to bed, and that's just kind of my way of getting still staying in touch and keeping my faith.
I heard somebody asked a group of us this week at something I was doing, and they said, "How do you know when God talks to you?" And I thought,
Mm.
what a great question. So how do you know? How do you know when? Like, do you actually hear God talking to you? Like, how do you? How do you kind of get in communion with him?
I kind of think of it just more so as, God's just, God's like the greatest listener. He just, you can just kind of sit there and just tell him everything, and, kind of, speak what's on your mind and speak what's in your heart. And I think that's kind of what a perspective that's kind of helped me is, because at first I was like, I'm kind of praying. It's like, I'm not really kind of getting anything back, but, it's kind of just, you guys just understand, like, he's just there listening, and, then he's going to help you kind of guide you down the right path. And that's kind of something my mom has also kind of helped me understand, throughout this process is, just talk to him and he'll eventually help you. And that's, I've seen it more times than not. So it's kind of, that's what's also helped me, kind of find that, faith and trust, and, knowing that it's all part of God's plan, and, just continuing to just stay in touch.
Yeah, so meaning like I think you're saying like you're trusting in the process, and then even if you get like you hit a wall and it's not happening, then something later on you have enough perspective now to look back and go, oh, that's
Exactly.
why this kind of happened, right? So
Yeah.
you can keep buying in. Yeah,
Hmm.
yeah, which is an important part because I very much struggle with patience.
Hmm.
So I think that the fact that you have been able to have that faith in that process, right? That this is guiding and it's ultimately for something that's better for you, even if hard, is like you've 95% of the people, maybe that's too high, but I think a lot of people are like, wow, that's incredible that you already have tackled that one,
Yeah.
right? And
Yeah.
don't have that, you're not have that resistance to it. So I mean, okay, so then from looking back at all this stuff right now, so you said you're in an awesome spot with your mom.
Mhm.
What's your relationship look like now?
Yeah, it's still good. I feel like once I got to college, it definitely, like, my relationship with my mom kind of took off. I kind of, because I went through some hard things, freshman year and throughout college. I kind of, really leaned on my mom throughout that whole process, and, had a lot of conversations, good and, difficult conversations with my mom. But I think that has really helped me and my mom, become closer, you know, recently over the past 5 years. I can talk to my mom pretty much about anything now, and I'll pretty much text her about anything that happens, that I need help with. And, it's definitely helped, because at first I would kind of just, like, throughout growing up and in high school, I would just kind of keep it to myself and not really tell her
Yeah.
anything.
Yeah.
And once I got to college, I dealt with some real world stuff, and I was like, okay, I
Mhm.
need some
Yeah.
advice here and some help. And, having those conversations with my mom, really helped strengthen me and hers relationship, I think, over the past 5 years. So we're still in a great spot. It's definitely
What
nice to
kind
kind of look back on,
of,
being what I was
no.
as a kid.
How, I mean, what kind of college mom is she? Like, is she like, what is your how often are you, like, communicating? I get that question all the time too, right?
Yeah, at first it was kind of like, I would, with both my parents, I would call them Sunday night. I'd FaceTime both of them. Kind of through the years, it's kind of gotten a little bit, like, gotten away from that. I'm not calling, like, every Sunday night, but for the first 4 years, I think it was literally like every Sunday night I would call both my mom and dad at the end of the day. But I'd
Oh,
still
that's
say I
nice.
talk to.
So structured. Yeah, that's
I would say I talk
right.
to my mom and dad both once a week still. It might not be Sunday night, but I'll definitely, like, stay in contact, like texting or calling her real quick, or my dad calling him real quick. Yeah, just staying in contact. I don't, because I don't like to, like, just, like, kind of go radio silent for a month,
Yeah.
because I don't leave
Yeah.
them in the dark. They have no idea what's going on.
Yeah, but I think where I'm also going is I don't know this for a fact. I'm asking the question.
Yeah.
Is your mom like helicopter bombing you though, or does she give
Oh,
you
okay. I
that
got you.
space? Right? I
Yeah,
like. I mean, how
she's giving
is
me the
she like
space.
on you all the time too?
No, 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 no. And that's how it's been all 4 years. I've kind of done this myself, just making sure I stay in contact with them. But they both kind of, once I got to school, like, just kind of let me do my thing. And I mean, at
They
first,
started
my mom
recognizing
definitely
you're a
was like,
man. Yeah,
when I go a little radio silent, my mom will be like, "Hey, what's going on? How's my son?" And I'll be like,
yeah,
"Sorry, I've been
right.
busy. I was
Yeah, yeah.
call." But it's definitely,
I think that's a piece to it. I mean, I think there's sometimes a lot of issues between the mom and son because I think it's very hard for moms to recognize one that you are this other entity, right? And there's a point at which you're not supposed to take care of you anymore. Like there's you have to have that distance. I think you need to have a little that distance. And then you come back, and that's the whole thing, right? You come back, and then but you have to recognize that you're a grown man now. You're a man. You're creating a life. You're in process of creating a life. You will continue to create a life, and then our role as moms changes a little bit, right? I'd say our role is there to be there when you need us and to celebrate you, but we're not there to nitpick and to create you anymore. Those days are over, right? It's
Mhm.
on you now. You got to go out and right, like we've launched you into the world. You're out there, and you go out and go to battle and come home when you need to, food and rest.
Yeah, yeah, pretty much.
Right, and that kind of warrior ethos, that warrior mentality of being the warrior mother, I think somehow in our culture we've lost it. We've lost it, and too many moms are thinking like the boys are supposed to be like stay with them the whole time, which is kind of more than the way that girls are typically. They kind of stay a lot closer to the mother. So, but the boys don't. They go out, right? They conquer. They come home that kind of thing, and it's just a different relationship, right? And it's normal. That's a healthy relationship. And the fact that you reach out because you feel an inner obligation, that's wonderful, right? That's what everybody wants. All moms want to hear that.
Mhm.
Like, what a good son, Ryan, right? You feel something internally, you should reach out to both your parents and make sure that they know you're still out there and
Yeah,
doing good stuff. And then they're so probably excited, especially moms are so excited, right? Those adult sons like actually text them and etc. I was the same way. I Jackson went to college and I think I only texted him for like probably like 9 weeks, and I think one day he was like, "Is there a reason you can't call me?" Right? Like, I don't it didn't even
yeah,
occur to me, like, he would actually miss me, right? And, like, need some sort of connection, but I thought, it's on his time. He's there to go to college and do his work, so I think
mhm.
that's really nice. So, top favorite memory, funny memory you have with your mom. Can you come up with one?
Uh, I think probably just I know it's just staying on the topic of sports, but this is probably one of the funniest ones that I like to tell is, I was like a minor league T-ball game and, I was running to first base and I just, like, tripped over the bag and, just fell down, just normal, like, nothing
Yep.
happened, and before I can even stand up, like, turn around and get up, I just see my mom sprinting across the baseball diamond, and I always joke that there was a dust cloud behind her because she was running so fast, and I turned around and got up and I was like, "Mom? Like, what are you doing?" And so we always joke about that. I was so embarrassed at the moment because I literally just fell
Oh,
down,
yeah.
and we always joke
Yeah.
before because up
She
before
thought you'd, like, probably
yeah, she, like,
busted
thought
out
I
all your teeth,
yeah,
broke
she
your
thought I
nose,
blew out
yeah.
my knee, and I was like, "I just tripped." And so we always would joke, like, because I hadn't started playing football yet, and so he was like, "Oh gosh, if Ryan starts playing football, Ryan's gonna get
Right.
tackled, and mom's gonna be there on the 5-yard line
On the
before
field?
we know it." Yeah. So that's always
Oh,
funny.
that's the mama bear. That's the mama
Yeah.
bear syndrome happening right
Oh,
there.
yeah.
Well, that's probably why going forward, you're like, "Nobody deal with me, right? I don't
Yeah.
nobody touch me.
Yeah.
I'm gonna take my injury myself."
Yeah. Yeah, it was funny. My
Yeah,
my dad always gives we always joke about that too because he was just standing there with the other dads, like, shaking his
yeah.
head.
Right, exactly. He's in the dad herd, right? But
Yeah.
that's a good point too. Don't be that mom. Don't be the mom that sprints out on the field. When they turn around or whatever, the court, whatever it is, wait till they signal, right? Wait till they
Yeah.
signal you. They'll let you know if you need to come over, and then you need
Yeah.
to be worried. Until then, don't worry about it, right?
Yeah. But
I
yeah.
love that. I could totally see her doing that too. She probably was fast, right?
Oh, yeah.
She probably had you pulled up no problem. Like, oh my gosh, Brian,
I
what's
was just
happening?
in disbelief when I turned around that she was there. I was like, "Is this actually happening right now?" I was so confused.
Oh, that's awesome. Oh yeah, I can see that your coaches are like, oh gosh, she's that
Yeah.
mom.
Yeah. Yeah, it's funny though.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, that's great. Well, it's hey, thank you so much for spending time with us today.
Yeah.
We wish you all the luck. I'd love to, we'd love to follow your story, and I think I just love it. I think it's great. I think you're going to give a lot of moms a lot of hope because again, it's a nice it's such a like I said, ebb and flow and understanding that relationship, I think is really key. And like, that's why we're doing this, right? I don't think we talk about that enough. But
Yeah.
where you are at 22 is, that gives a lot of hope to people. It's not like you're waiting till 32. So ladies, you only have to wait till 22. See, keep them in sports, keep them disciplined,
Yep.
keep them praying.
Yep,
All right,
absolutely.
Ryan, thank you so much. Yeah, have a great day.
You too.